My coworker stole credit for my project, so I sent the screenshots to her boss. I stared at my laptop screen in complete disbelief, watching Sarah Martinez gesture confidently at the projection displaying my social media campaign. Every slide, every tagline, every carefully crafted visual element I'd spent the last 4 months developing for our biggest client, Meridian Fitness, was being presented as her brainchild to a room full of executives. As you can see, Sarah said smoothly, clicking to the next slide featuring my concept for user-generated transformation stories, I really wanted to focus on authentic customer narratives rather than traditional before and after photos. It's more emotionally resonant and drives higher engagement rates. My hands clenched into fists under the conference table. I had pitched that exact strategy to her 3 weeks ago during what I thought was a collaborative brainstorming session. She'd seemed genuinely excited about it, asking detailed questions about implementation and metrics. Now I realized she'd been taking notes for an entirely different reason. VP of Marketing Janet Chen nodded approvingly. This is exactly the innovative thinking we need for the Q4 push. Sarah, the research depth here is impressive. How long did this take you? About 4 months of intensive development, Sarah replied without missing a beat. I wanted to really dig deep into the demographic data and test different messaging approaches before presenting. The casual way she delivered that line made my stomach turn. 4 months ago, she'd been completely focused on the boutique hotel campaign that had ultimately flopped. I had the email threads to prove it, timestamps showing I'd been working nights and weekends on Meridian while she was still trying to salvage her disaster. The projected ROI increase of 37% is particularly compelling, added Director of Client Relations Mike Torres, scrolling through the presentation on his tablet. Sarah, I think you've really outdone yourself here. I caught Sarah's eye across the table and saw something that chilled me, a tiny, satisfied smirk that disappeared so quickly I almost thought I'd imagined it. Almost. Thank you, she said, her voice perfectly modulated with just the right amount of humble confidence. I'm really passionate about pushing creative boundaries while maintaining strong analytical foundations. That phrase, pushing creative boundaries while maintaining strong analytical foundations, was literally copied word for word from my project proposal email dated August 15th. I'd spent 20 minutes crafting that particular sentence, wanting to perfectly capture my approach for the initial pitch to Janet. As the meeting continued with Sarah fielding questions about my strategy, my research, and my creative concepts, I felt something shift inside me. The betrayal was devastating enough, but watching her bask in praise that belonged to me while hinting at readiness for bigger challenges and responsibilities made my vision blur with rage. When Janet mentioned that this kind of initiative would definitely factor into upcoming promotion decisions, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom before I said something I'd regret. In the sterile fluorescent lighting, I splashed cold water on my face and made a decision. Sarah thought she was clever, stealing months of my work and presenting it as her own. She probably assumed I'd stay quiet to avoid conflict, maybe even convince myself that collaboration was just part of the job. She was wrong. I had every email, every draft, every timestamped file saved sitting in my computer. 4 months of digital breadcrumbs that told the real story of who created the Meridian campaign. Sarah wanted to play games with my career? Game on. Back in the conference room, I slid into my seat just as Sarah was wrapping up her presentation with a flourish that made me want to scream. She'd even stolen my closing line about transforming brand loyalty through authentic storytelling. The executives were practically glowing with approval. Exceptional work, Sarah, Janet said, making notes on her tablet. I'd like you to present this to the Meridian executives next Friday. If they approve, we're looking at a $2.3 million campaign launch. My heart sank. That presentation was supposed to be mine. I'd been preparing for months to pitch directly to Meridian's CEO, Rebecca Walsh, and their marketing director. It was going to be my chance to prove I was ready for senior-level client management. I'd be honored, Sarah replied, and I caught that smirk again. This time she wasn't even trying to hide it. As the meeting dispersed, Mike Torres approached Sarah with his phone out. Mind if I get a quick photo for the company newsletter? Rising Star delivers game-changing campaign, something like that? The flash went off before I could process what was happening. There was Sarah, beaming next to the projection of my work, about to be immortalized in our company's monthly newsletter that went out to over 3,000 employees and clients. Actually, Janet added, overhearing, Sarah, would you be available for a brief interview with Marketing Today magazine? They're doing a feature on innovative campaign strategies, and this Meridian concept would be perfect. Great exposure for both you and the agency. My throat felt like it was closing. Not only had Sarah stolen my project, but now she was about to become the public face of my work in a major industry publication. My career-defining campaign was going to launch someone else's career instead. That sounds incredible, Sarah said, her voice slightly breathless with fake humility. I mean, if you think the work is strong enough for that kind of spotlight. Are you kidding? Mike laughed. This is some of the most solid strategic thinking I've seen all year. The demographic segmentation alone is brilliant. As they continued heaping praise on her, I felt my phone buzz with a Slack notification. It was from our creative director, Lisa Park, who'd been in client meetings all morning, heard through the grapevine that Sarah knocked it out of the park with Meridian. So exciting to see her stepping up. Coffee later to celebrate? The news was already spreading. By lunch, the entire office would know that Sarah Martinez had single-handedly developed our biggest campaign of the quarter. By next week, she'd be presenting my work to a multi-million-dollar client. By next month, she'd probably be sitting in the senior marketing specialist role I'd been working toward for 2 years. I watched Sarah pack up her laptop, the laptop that had never contained a single draft of the Meridian campaign because every file, every iteration, every brainstorm session had been on my computer. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my career. Great presentation, I managed to say as she passed my chair, testing her reaction. Sarah paused, and for a split second, something flickered across her face, guilt, maybe, or fear. But then she smiled that perfectly practiced smile. Thanks, Emma. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? Teamwork. As if I'd been anything more than an unwitting research assistant for her grand theft. Right, I replied, matching her fake smile with one of my own. I'm sure it'll go great with the client next week. As Sarah left the conference room, probably to start memorizing talking points for my campaign, I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my email archives. Time to collect some evidence. The evidence collection turned out to be even more damning than I'd hoped. Back at my desk, I methodically combed through 4 months of digital breadcrumbs, screenshotting timestamps, and organizing files into a folder I grimly named Project Theft Documentation. The email chain alone was devastating. August 3rd, my initial concept proposal to Janet, with Sarah CC'd as a collaborative partner. August 15th, my detailed strategy breakdown that Sarah had quoted verbatim in today's presentation. September 22nd, my demographic research analysis, complete with the exact statistics she'd rattled off to impress executives. But the real smoking gun was the shared Google Drive folder I created for team collaboration. Every single edit, revision, and addition was timestamped with my user ID. The document history showed Sarah's only contributions were minor formatting changes and comments like "looks good" and "love this direction." I was deep in my evidence gathering when my computer pinged with a calendar invitation. The subject line made my blood run cold. Meridian Campaign Strategy Session, Lead, S. Martinez. The meeting was scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Attendees included Janet, Mike, our head of creative services David Kim, and 3 people from Meridian Fitness's marketing team. The agenda, written in Sarah's characteristic bullet point style, outlined preparation for next Friday's client presentation. My client presentation. I stared at the invitation, remembering how Sarah had seemed so supportive when I'd first started developing the Meridian pitch. She volunteered to help however she could, asking to be looped into email chains and offering to take notes during research calls so I could focus on the bigger picture. I'd actually been grateful for her assistance. What an idiot I'd been. My phone buzzed with a text from my work friend Jenna in accounting. Holy shit, Emma, did you see the Slack announcement about Sarah's promotion track? Janet just posted in #general announcements. I frantically switched to Slack and found the message that made my vision blur. Asterisk thrilled to announce that Sarah Martinez has been selected for our Senior Marketing Specialist Fast Track program, effective immediately. Sarah's exceptional work on the Meridian Fitness campaign demonstrates exactly the kind of strategic innovation and client-focused thinking we value. She'll be transitioning to advanced project leadership with mentorship from our VP-level team. Congratulations, Sarah. Party popper asterisk. The message already had 47 reactions and a string of congratulatory comments. I watched in real time as colleagues who barely knew Sarah's name yesterday praised her incredible rise and well-deserved recognition. The Fast Track program. The same program I'd applied for 6 months ago and been told I needed one more standout campaign to qualify for. The program that came with a $15,000 salary increase, senior-level project assignments, and a clear path to management within 18 months. Sarah had stolen my campaign and parlayed it directly into the career advancement I'd been working toward for 2 years. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the congratulatory messages. Mike Torres had posted, Sarah's demographic analysis on this campaign was absolutely next level. Can't wait to see what she tackles next. David from Creative added, the visual storytelling strategy Sarah developed is going to revolutionize how we approach fitness brands. Brilliant work. Every compliment felt like a knife twist. These people were praising my late nights, my weekend research sessions, my months of careful client analysis. They just had the wrong name attached to it. I was about to close Slack when a direct message popped up from Sarah herself. Hey Emma. I know you helped with some early brainstorming on Meridian. Would you mind putting together a timeline of our collaboration for the client prep meeting tomorrow? Janet wants to make sure we have all our ducks in a row. Thanks. Smiling face with smiling eyes. The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted me to document my own contributions so she could better explain how she'd collaborated with junior team members. She was actually asking me to help her steal credit more effectively. I screenshot the message and added it to my growing evidence folder. Then I started composing an email to Janet Chin. I must have drafted and deleted that email to Janet 15 times. Each version felt either too emotional, too accusatory, or not comprehensive enough. How do you professionally explain that your colleague is a manipulative thief without sounding like a bitter coworker throwing a tantrum? While I struggled with the wording, another notification popped up that made my stomach drop. Sarah had updated her LinkedIn profile. Her new headline read, Senior Marketing Specialist, Fast Track Program, Award-winning campaign strategist, driving 37% ROI growth through innovative social media solutions. Award-winning? The Meridian campaign hadn't even launched yet. But there she was, already positioning herself as some kind of marketing genius based entirely on my work. Her activity feed showed she'd posted about achieving a career milestone through dedication and innovative thinking, complete with a photo from this morning's meeting where she was pointing at my campaign slides. The post already had 68 likes and 12 comments from industry contacts congratulating her on the brilliant Meridian strategy. I recognized several names, marketing directors from major brands who would remember Sarah's face when her upcoming magazine feature ran. People who might hire her away from our company for even bigger opportunities, all based on the reputation she was building with my stolen work. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the comments, Rebecca Walsh, CEO of Meridian Fitness and our actual client, had written, looking forward to working with the strategic mind behind this campaign. Excited for Friday's presentation. Rebecca Walsh. The client I'd been hoping to impress for months. She now thought Sarah was the creative genius behind the campaign that was supposed to be my big break. When they met on Friday, Sarah would cement that impression with my own talking points and strategy explanations. I was spiraling into panic when my desk phone rang. The caller ID showed Janet's extension. Emma? Could you come to my office for a quick chat? My heart hammered as I walked the 30 feet to Janet's corner office. Maybe she'd realized something was wrong. Maybe she'd noticed inconsistencies in Sarah's presentation. Maybe. Close the door, Janet said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Her expression was unreadable, but I caught sight of her computer screen before she minimized the window. It looked like email threads, possibly mine. I wanted to talk to you about the Meridian campaign, she began, and I held my breath. Sarah mentioned you did some early brainstorming support, and I want to make sure you're getting appropriate recognition for your contributions. Contributions. Support. The carefully chosen words that would reduce 4 months of intensive work to a footnote in someone else's success story. I appreciate that, I said carefully, trying to read her expression. I did put quite a bit of effort into the initial development. Janet nodded thoughtfully. Sarah speaks very highly of your collaborative spirit. She's recommended you for the supporting team credit when we submit this campaign for the American Marketing Awards next spring. supporting team credit. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Sarah was planning to enter my campaign for industry awards, prestigious recognition that could define careers, with me listed as a supporting contributor. That's generous of her, I managed. I also wanted to let you know that your next project assignment will be working under Sarah's leadership on the wellness startup pitch we're developing. She specifically requested you for her team, given how well you two collaborated on Meridian. The room seemed to tilt. Not only had Sarah stolen my current project, but she positioned herself as my superior on future assignments. She was systematically dismantling my career trajectory while making it look like professional development. Sarah will be a great mentor for you, Janet continued. Learning from someone who can develop strategy at that level will be invaluable experience. I sat there nodding and smiling while internally screaming, wondering if Janet genuinely believed what she was saying or if this was some kind of test. Did she suspect something? Was she waiting for me to speak up? Is there anything else you wanted to discuss about the Meridian project? Janet asked, and I caught something in her tone, an opening, maybe, or a warning. This was my moment. I could lay out everything right now, produce my evidence, and fight for what was mine. Instead, I heard myself saying, no, I think Sarah covered everything perfectly. Janet smiled. Excellent. I'm so glad we have such strong team players. Walking back to my desk, I realized I'd just made everything 10 times worse. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of fake normalcy while my career imploded in real time. I watched Sarah hold court by the coffee machine, graciously accepting congratulations from colleagues who kept using words like visionary and game changer to describe my work. The irony was suffocating. At 4:17 p.m., my computer chimed with an email that made my hands freeze over the keyboard. The sender was Rebecca Walsh from Meridian Fitness, but it was addressed to Sarah with me CC'd as an afterthought. Sarah, I've been reviewing the campaign materials Janet forwarded, and I'm incredibly impressed with your strategic approach. The demographic segmentation showing 18 to 34 females comprising 67% of our potential market expansion was particularly insightful. I'd love to discuss how you developed those insights during Friday's presentation. Looking forward to meeting the brilliant mind behind this campaign. Rebecca. Those statistics. I remembered staying until 9 p.m. on a Tuesday in September, cross-referencing 3 different market research databases to compile that exact breakdown. I'd been so proud of finding that 67% figure buried in a supplementary data set that most people would have overlooked. Now Rebecca Walsh, the client who could make or break my reputation in the fitness marketing space, was praising Sarah's brilliant mind for discovering insights I'd painstakingly uncovered through weeks of analysis. I was still staring at the email when Sarah appeared at my desk, her smile so bright it could have powered our entire floor. Emma. I just wanted to thank you again for all your support on Meridian, she said, loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. I made sure to mention to Janet how helpful you were with some of the research tasks. Research tasks. 4 months of strategic development reduced to data entry. I also wanted to give you a heads up, she continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Rebecca Walsh specifically asked about team dynamics during Friday's presentation. I think she wants to understand our collaborative process. My stomach clenched. What did you tell her? Just that you're incredibly detail-oriented and great at executing the vision once the strategic direction is set, Sarah replied smoothly. She seemed really interested in how I manage junior team members on complex campaigns. Junior team members. We were the same level, had been hired within 6 months of each other, and had identical job titles until her promotion this morning. But she was already rewriting history, positioning herself as my supervisor who had generously guided me through tasks above my capability. I'm sure you'll represent the collaboration accurately, I said, testing her reaction. Something flickered behind her eyes, too quick to identify, but unmistakably calculating. Of course. Accuracy is so important, especially with high-stakes clients. After she walked away, I realized she'd just delivered a subtle threat. She controlled the narrative now, and any attempt I made to contradict her version would look like a junior employee trying to claim credit for senior-level work. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Marcus in design. Dude, crazy about Sarah's meteoric rise. Didn't you two start the same week during orientation? She must be working some serious magic behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. If only he knew. I opened my evidence folder and added Rebecca Walsh's email to the growing collection. The timeline was becoming crystal clear. Sarah had systematically positioned herself to receive credit, carefully documented our collaboration in ways that minimized my contributions, and now had client validation that would be nearly impossible to contradict. But as I scrolled through months of timestamps and email threads, one detail jumped out that I'd almost missed. In her eagerness to steal everything, Sarah had made a crucial error. She'd forwarded my original research files to herself using her company email, and our IT system logged every file transfer with precise timestamps. According to the metadata, Sarah had accessed my demographic analysis documents for the first time on October 3rd, 2 days before her presentation to the executives. She couldn't have spent 4 months developing insights she'd only seen for 48 hours. For the first time all day, I smiled. The smile faded as quickly as it had appeared when I realized the fatal flaw in my discovery. Sure, the IT log showed Sarah had accessed my files on October 3rd, but she could easily claim I'd shared them with her verbally weeks earlier and she'd simply downloaded them for reference. Without witnesses to our private conversations, it would be her word against mine, and she was now the fast-tracked senior specialist while I was just the supportive team member. I was spiraling into this depressing realization when my computer pinged with a meeting invitation that made my heart stop. The subject line read, Meridian Campaign Media Interview Prep scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. The attendee list included Sarah, Janet, our Director of Communications Kelly Martinez, and someone from Marketing Today magazine's editorial team. They were moving fast. Sarah would be on record in a major industry publication within 48 hours, cementing her reputation as the mastermind behind the Meridian strategy. Once that article published, any attempt I made to reclaim credit would look like desperate attention-seeking from a jealous colleague. But as I stared at the meeting details, something else caught my attention. The Marketing Today journalist was listed as Amanda Chen, Janet's sister-in-law, according to the company holiday party gossip I'd overheard last December. This wasn't just a random media opportunity, it was a carefully orchestrated PR move to showcase Janet's department's rising talent. My phone rang, interrupting my panic spiral. The caller ID showed my mom's number, and I almost let it go to voicemail before remembering I'd promised to update her on my career progress. Honey, how did the big presentation go today? Mom's enthusiastic voice felt like salt in an open wound. It went, well, I managed, unable to explain that my months of work had launched someone else's career instead of my own. I'm so proud of you, Emma. Your father keeps bragging to his golf buddies about his daughter, the marketing strategist. He even printed out that article you sent about demographic targeting techniques. The article. I'd forgotten that I'd published a piece in Marketing Insights Weekly last month about innovative approaches to fitness industry demographics, the exact methodology I'd used for the Meridian campaign. The piece had my byline, my photo, and detailed explanations of the analytical framework that Sarah had presented as her own innovation this morning. Mom, I need to go, I said suddenly, my mind racing. Work emergency. Of course, sweetheart. Go be brilliant. I hung up and immediately pulled up the Marketing Insights Weekly website. There it was, Revolutionary Demographic Analysis, Targeting the Untapped Fitness Market by Emma Rodriguez, published September 18th. The article outlined my exact methodology for identifying the 18 to 34 female demographic that comprised 67% of expansion opportunities, the same insights Rebecca Walsh had praised Sarah for developing. The article had a timestamp, my verified author profile, and detailed explanations that perfectly matched the Meridian campaign strategy. It was published 3 weeks before Sarah had even accessed my files, and 6 weeks before her presentation to the executives. I screenshot every page, my hands trembling with something between rage and relief. This wasn't just evidence, this was proof of my expertise in the exact field Sarah was claiming to have mastered. Any marketing professional reading both my published article and the upcoming feature about Sarah would immediately recognize the identical methodology. My computer chimed with a Slack message from David in Creative Services. Emma, quick question about color palette choices on Meridian. Sarah mentioned you handled some of the visual research. Do you have the brand psychology analysis somewhere? Need it for client prep. I stared at the message, realizing David had just handed me another piece of evidence. The brand psychology analysis had been entirely my work, a detailed study of color theory and emotional responses that had taken me 2 weeks to complete. I had the original Photoshop files, research citations, and a draft email I'd sent to David on September 30th outlining my recommendations. More importantly, I had David asking me for the analysis, not Sarah. If Sarah had really developed the campaign, wouldn't she have all the supporting materials herself? I was building a response when another message popped up, this time from Mike Torres. Emma, hate to bother you, but could you resend those competitive analysis spreadsheets from the Meridian project? Sarah said you were the detail person on market research and I need the data for tomorrow's strategy session. The detail person. There it was again, Sarah positioning me as the grunt worker who had simply executed her vision. But Mike's request revealed something crucial. Sarah didn't actually have the research files because she'd never created them. She was scrambling to collect my work from various team members who assumed I'd been her research assistant. I opened a new document and started typing rapidly, creating a comprehensive timeline that cross-referenced my published article, the IT access logs, team member requests for my files, and every piece of evidence I'd collected. The story was devastating. Sarah had systematically stolen credit for work she couldn't have developed, using methodology she'd never demonstrated before, claiming ownership of files she'd accessed for the first time days before her presentation. As I worked, one more notification appeared that made my blood run cold. Sarah had tagged me in a LinkedIn post, grateful for the talented team that supported the development of our WordTrack Meridian campaign. Special thanks to Emma Rodriguez for her research assistance. Collaboration makes us all stronger. Flex biceps #teamwork #marketing #leadership. She was publicly establishing the narrative before I could challenge it. But as I read her post, I noticed she'd made another critical error. She thanked me for research assistance on a campaign she claimed to have spent 4 months developing solo. If I'd only provided research support, why was she thanking me at all? The contradiction was glaring, and I had documentation to prove it. I was still documenting Sarah's LinkedIn contradiction when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Emma Rodriguez? This is Amanda Chen from Marketing Today magazine. I'm calling about tomorrow's interview regarding the Meridian Fitness campaign. My stomach dropped. The journalist was calling me directly, not Sarah. I think there might be some confusion, I started carefully. Sarah Martinez is handling that interview. Yes, but your name kept coming up in my preliminary research, Amanda said, and I could hear papers rustling. I found your published article from September about fitness demographic targeting, and the methodology is remarkably similar to what I'm seeing in the Meridian materials. I always like to speak with the full creative team to get a complete picture. The full creative team. Amanda Chen didn't know Sarah had claimed sole credit for the campaign. I'd love to get your perspective on how you and Sarah collaborated on the demographic analysis, she continued. Your Marketing Insights article suggests you're quite the expert in this specific area. My mind raced. This was either a trap or an opportunity, possibly both. What exactly has Sarah told you about our collaboration? She mentioned you provided valuable research support, but I'm curious about the strategic development process. The demographic segmentation framework in the Meridian pitch is nearly identical to what you outlined in your published piece. Did you develop that methodology specifically for this campaign? I chose my words carefully. The methodology I published in September was based on research I'd been conducting for several months. It formed the foundation for the analytical approach we used. Fascinating. And the 67% market expansion figure, was that discovered through your framework? Yes, that came directly from applying the segmentation model I developed. I was trying to stay diplomatic, but Amanda's questions were making it clear she'd done her homework. I'd love to include your insights in the article. Could we schedule a brief call tomorrow before the main interview? Say, 9 a.m.? After I agreed and hung up, I realized what had just happened. Amanda Chen had essentially confirmed that my published methodology was the backbone of the Meridian campaign. She wanted to interview me separately, which meant she was already questioning Sarah's version of events. I was still processing this development when David from Creative appeared at my desk, looking frazzled. Emma, thank God you're still here. I'm in crisis mode preparing for tomorrow's client meeting and Sarah doesn't seem to have half the creative files. She said you might have the original mood boards and visual research? Which specific files do you need? I asked, though I knew the answer. Everything, honestly. The color psychology analysis, the competitor visual audits, the user persona mockups, basically all the creative foundation materials. Sarah mentioned you were heavily involved in the early development. Heavily involved. That was an interesting way to describe someone who had supposedly just provided research assistance. I have all those files, I said slowly. But I'm surprised Sarah doesn't have copies since she presented the campaign. David looked genuinely confused. Yeah, it's weird. She said she's been so focused on the strategic overview that she needs to gather the supporting materials from the team. But between you and me, some of the creative decisions she's asking us to prepare for tomorrow don't match the original vision at all. What do you mean? Like, she wants to pivot the color palette to blues and greens, but your brand psychology analysis specifically recommended the warm orange and red scheme for energy and motivation. When I pointed that out, she seemed surprised that we had psychological reasoning behind the choices. I felt a chill run down my spine. Sarah didn't just lack the files, she didn't understand the strategic reasoning behind the creative decisions. She was about to present a campaign she couldn't explain to a client who would ask detailed questions about every choice. David, what time is the client prep meeting tomorrow? 2 p.m. Why? The timeline was becoming clear. Amanda Chen's interview at 9 a.m., followed by the team prep meeting at 2 p.m., followed by the actual client presentation on Friday. Sarah had less than 48 hours to master the intricacies of a campaign she'd never actually developed. Just wondering, I said, but my mind was already working. I'll send you those creative files within the hour. As David walked away, I opened my email and started typing a message to Amanda Chen. If Sarah wanted to take credit for my work, she was going to have to prove she understood it first. And I had a feeling that tomorrow's interview was going to be very enlightening. I spent the next hour crafting the most professional yet devastating email of my career. To Amanda Chen, I attached my original project timeline, key research documents, and most importantly, a detailed breakdown of how my published methodology had been applied to generate every major insight in the Meridian campaign. I kept the tone collaborative and helpful, never directly contradicting Sarah's claims, just providing additional context that happened to prove she was a fraud. But as I was about to hit send, my computer chimed with an urgent Slack message from Janet. Emma, need you in my office immediately. Bring any files related to Meridian campaign development. My blood turned to ice. Either someone had tipped Janet off about my investigation, or Sarah had made a preemptive strike to discredit me before I could expose her. I quickly sent my email to Amanda Chen, then gathered my evidence folder and walked to Janet's office on unsteady legs. Close the door and have a seat, Janet said, her expression unreadable. Her computer screen showed what looked like email threads and document comparisons. I've been doing some digging into the Meridian project timeline, and I need to ask you some direct questions. Here it was. The moment that would either vindicate me or destroy what was left of my career. Did you develop the demographic segmentation methodology that formed the basis of this campaign? Janet asked, cutting straight to the point. I took a breath. Yes. I published the framework in Marketing Insights Weekly in September, and I've been developing the underlying research since June. Janet nodded slowly. And the brand psychology analysis that determined our creative direction? That was my work as well. I have the original files, research citations, and email drafts from late September. What about the competitive landscape analysis that identified the market expansion opportunity? Mine. I can show you the spreadsheets with my user ID on every tab, dating back to August. Janet leaned back in her chair, studying my face. Emma, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Did Sarah Martinez contribute any original strategic thinking to this campaign? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward all day. I could play it safe, maintain a collaborative fiction, and accept my role as Sarah's uncredited research assistant. Or I could tell the truth and watch her carefully constructed lies crumble. No, I said quietly. Sarah accessed my completed research files for the first time on October 3rd, according to our IT logs. She contributed formatting suggestions and positive feedback, but no original strategic development. Janet's expression didn't change, but she made a note on her tablet. I see. And you have documentation to support this timeline? Comprehensive documentation. Email threads, file timestamps, IT access logs, and my published article that predates her involvement by weeks. Why didn't you speak up during yesterday's presentation? The question I'd been dreading. Because I thought it was a misunderstanding that could be resolved privately. I didn't realize Sarah was planning to claim sole credit until I watched her present my work as her own innovation. Janet was quiet for a long moment, tapping her pen against her desk. Finally, she looked up with an expression I couldn't read. Emma, I need you to forward me everything you have. Every email, every file, every piece of evidence. I want it all in my inbox within the next hour. My heart was pounding. What happens to Sarah? Let me worry about Sarah, Janet said grimly. Right now, I need to figure out how to handle a client presentation that's based on stolen work, a magazine interview that's about to publish false information, and a fast-track promotion that was awarded under completely fraudulent circumstances. She paused, then added words that made my stomach drop. This is going to get very messy, very quickly. I left Janet's office feeling like I was walking through a minefield. The evidence was now in her hands, but instead of relief, I felt a growing sense of dread. Sarah had proven herself to be incredibly manipulative. There was no way she'd go down without a fight. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah herself. Hey. Heard Janet wanted to chat with you about Meridian. Hope everything went well. Coffee tomorrow before the big interview? Would love your input on a few talking points. Smiling face with smiling eyes. The casual tone made my skin crawl. Either Sarah had no idea what was coming, or she was testing to see if I'd revealed anything. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Janet before responding with a non-committal sure, sounds good. At 6:47 p.m., just as I was packing up to leave, my computer exploded with notifications. Sarah had sent a company-wide email with a subject line, Meridian Campaign Team Recognition. Asterisk hi everyone. As we prepare for this week's exciting client presentation, I wanted to make sure our collaborative team gets proper recognition. This campaign truly showcases the power of mentorship and professional development. Special acknowledgement to Emma Rodriguez, whose research assistance and data compilation were invaluable to bringing this vision to life. I'm so proud of how our junior team members stepped up to support this strategic initiative. Looking forward to sharing more details after Friday's presentation. Sarah asterisk. My hands were shaking as I read it. She'd sent this to over 200 people, every employee in our division, plus key contacts from other departments. She was publicly establishing me as her subordinate again, but this time with witnesses from across the entire company. The replies started flooding in immediately. Congratulations to Sarah for her leadership and mentorship skills. Compliments about her ability to develop junior talent and build strong teams. My phone buzzed with texts from friends asking why I hadn't mentioned I was working under Sarah's supervision. But as I scrolled through the responses, one message made my blood run cold. It was from Rebecca Walsh at Meridian Fitness. Sarah, it's wonderful to see such thoughtful team leadership. I'm looking forward to discussing your mentorship approach during Friday's presentation. Building junior talent is something we value highly at Meridian. Rebecca Walsh now expected to discuss Sarah's mentorship philosophy. A topic Sarah would have to completely improvise, about a professional relationship that didn't exist, regarding work she'd never actually supervised. I was still staring at Rebecca's message when my desk phone rang. The caller ID showed Amanda Chen's number. Emma, I just saw an interesting company-wide email about the Meridian campaign, Amanda said without preamble. According to Sarah Martinez, you provided research assistance under her mentorship. But that contradicts what you told me earlier about developing the demographic methodology. My heart was racing. The situation is complicated. I've been a business journalist for 12 years, Emma. I can smell a story from a mile away, and this smells like either credit theft or someone lying to a reporter. Which is it? I looked around the mostly empty office, making sure no one could overhear. Off the record? For now. Sarah accessed my completed research files for the first time on October 3rd. She's claiming 4 months of development work that she never did. Amanda was quiet for a moment. That's a serious accusation. You're telling me she stole your entire campaign? I'm telling you that I have timestamped documentation proving I developed every strategic element she presented. She contributed feedback and formatting suggestions. Jesus, Amanda muttered. And now she's doing interviews as the mastermind behind work she plagiarized? It gets worse. She just sent a company-wide email positioning herself as my mentor, and our client is now expecting to discuss leadership strategies that don't exist. Emma, I need to ask you something directly. Are you prepared to go on the record with this? Because if what you're telling me is true, this isn't just workplace drama, it's professional fraud on a scale that could destroy careers. I thought about Sarah's smug smile during yesterday's presentation. Her casual theft of 2 years' worth of my career building. The fast-track promotion that should have been mine. The magazine feature that would cement her reputation using my work. Yes, I said. I'm prepared to go on the record. Good. Because I just received a very interesting email with some compelling documentation, and I think tomorrow's interview is going to be very different than Sarah Martinez expects. After Amanda hung up, I sat in the empty office feeling like I'd just lit a fuse on a bomb I couldn't defuse. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., a business journalist armed with evidence would start asking Sarah detailed questions about work she'd never done. By Friday's client presentation, one of our careers would be over. I just hoped it would be hers. I arrived at the office at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours early, my stomach churning with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Amanda Chen's interview with Sarah was scheduled for 9 a.m., and I wanted to be there to witness whatever was about to unfold. The office was nearly empty except for Marcus from IT, who waved from across the floor. Early bird today, Emma? Heard there's some big media interview happening. Word traveled fast in our building. Something like that, I replied, settling at my desk and pretending to review emails while actually watching the elevator bank like a hawk. At 8:47 a.m., Sarah emerged from the elevator looking polished and confident in her navy blazer, the one she wore for important client meetings. She carried a leather portfolio that I knew contained printed copies of my campaign materials, and she was practically glowing with anticipation. This was her moment to shine in front of a major industry publication. She spotted me and walked over with that practiced smile. Emma, you're here early. Thanks again for all your support on this project. I made sure to mention your research contributions to Amanda when she called yesterday. Research contributions. Even now, facing a journalist who'd done her homework, Sarah was sticking to the script that reduced me to a data entry assistant. I'm sure the interview will go great, I said, matching her fake enthusiasm. Amanda seemed really thorough when she called me. Something flickered across Sarah's face, surprise, maybe concern. She called you? What did you two discuss? Just background information about the demographic methodology. She'd read my Marketing Insights article and wanted some context about how we adapted it for Meridian. Sarah's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Right, of course. It's great that your research background complemented the strategic vision so well. At exactly 9 a.m., Amanda Chen stepped off the elevator. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and the confident bearing of someone who'd built her career asking uncomfortable questions. Sarah Martinez? Amanda extended her hand. I'm Amanda Chen from Marketing Today. Ready for our chat? Absolutely. I'm so excited to share the story behind the Meridian campaign, Sarah replied, her voice bright with enthusiasm that would probably curdle within the next 20 minutes. They headed toward conference room B, and I watched through the glass walls as they settled in. Amanda pulled out a digital recorder and what looked like a thick folder of documents. Sarah opened her portfolio and spread out the campaign materials with obvious pride. Even from across the office, I could see the moment things started going sideways. Amanda asked her first question, and Sarah launched into what was clearly a rehearsed overview of her strategic approach. But then Amanda opened her folder and pulled out what looked like my published article, placing it next to the Meridian materials. Sarah's confident gesturing slowed, then stopped entirely. Amanda pointed to something on the page, asked another question, and I watched Sarah's face cycle through confusion, then recognition, then barely controlled panic. She glanced toward the glass wall, caught my eye, and I saw the exact moment she realized I'd given Amanda everything. My phone buzzed with a Slack message from Janet. Emma, please come to my office immediately. Bring your laptop. As I gathered my things, I could see Amanda pulling out more documents, what looked like email printouts and spreadsheets. Sarah was leaning back in her chair, her polished confidence cracking like ice in spring. The interview that was supposed to launch Sarah's career into the stratosphere had just become an interrogation. And according to my watch, they still had 45 minutes to go. Janet's office felt like a war room when I arrived. Her desk was covered with printed emails, spreadsheets, and what looked like a complete forensic breakdown of the Meridian project timeline. She had her laptop open, displaying side-by-side comparisons of my original files and the presentation Sarah had given. "Sit down, Emma. We have a problem," Janet said, not looking up from her screen. "I spent half the night going through everything you sent me, and then I got a very interesting call from our legal department at 6:30 this morning." My stomach dropped. Legal? Apparently, Rebecca Walsh from Meridian forwarded our campaign materials to her brand strategy consultant yesterday for a preliminary review. That consultant happens to be Patricia Morrison from Sterling & Associates, who also read your Marketing Insights weekly article when it was published in September. I knew that name. Patricia Morrison was a legend in fitness marketing, with 30 years of experience and a client roster that included half the major athletic brands in the country. "Patricia called Rebecca at 7 a.m. today," Janet continued, finally looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. "She told Rebecca that our campaign strategy was either plagiarized from your published work, or you were the actual strategist behind it. Rebecca is now threatening to pull the entire $2.3 million contract unless we can explain the discrepancy." The room seemed to tilt. "What does that mean for Friday's presentation?" "It means there might not be a Friday presentation," Janet said grimly. "Rebecca wants a conference call at 2 p.m. today, before we do any more prep work, to discuss what she's calling concerning questions about campaign authorship and team transparency." My phone buzzed with an urgent text from Marcus in IT. "Holy shit, Emma, what's happening in conference room B?" Sarah just ran out looking like she was about to throw up. Through Janet's office window, I could see Amanda Chin still sitting in the conference room, reviewing her notes with the methodical precision of a journalist who'd just uncovered something significant. Sarah was nowhere to be seen. "There's more," Janet said, pulling up her email. "Sarah sent me a message 20 minutes ago requesting an emergency meeting. She wants to discuss what she calls inaccurate information being spread about the campaign development process." She showed me Sarah's email, timestamped at 9:23 a.m. "Janet, I need to speak with you immediately about some concerning developments. It appears there may be some confusion about individual contributions to the Meridian project, and I want to clarify the timeline before any misinformation spreads. Emma Rodriguez has been making claims about her involvement that don't align with the documented collaboration process. I have concerns about her professionalism and accuracy. Can we meet ASAP? Sarah asterisk. The audacity was breathtaking. Even caught red-handed, Sarah was trying to flip the narrative and position me as the dishonest one. "She's trying to discredit me before the evidence destroys her," I said, showing Janet the text Marcus had sent. Janet read it and shook her head. "Emma, I need you to understand something. This situation is about to explode in ways that will affect everyone involved. Patricia Morrison doesn't just consult for Meridian, she sits on the board of the American Marketing Association and writes the industry ethics guidelines. If she believes academic or professional fraud occurred, she has the authority to trigger formal investigations that could impact our entire agency." The weight of that hit me like a truck. This wasn't just about Sarah's stolen promotion anymore. The ripple effects could destroy client relationships, trigger industry blacklisting, and potentially result in legal action for contract fraud. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. Janet closed her laptop and looked at me with something that might have been respect. "Right now? I need you to be prepared to present your own work to Rebecca Walsh at 2 p.m. Because if we're going to salvage this relationship, it's going to be the actual strategist explaining the actual strategy." My career-defining moment was finally here. It just wasn't happening the way I'd ever imagined. At 10:15 a.m., Sarah finally resurfaced, looking like she'd been hit by a freight train. Her navy blazer was wrinkled, her carefully styled hair disheveled, and there were mascara smudges under her eyes that she tried unsuccessfully to wipe away. She walked straight to Janet's office without making eye contact with anyone. I watched through the glass as Janet gestured for Sarah to sit, then closed her door and pulled the blinds. Whatever conversation was happening in there, it wasn't meant for public consumption. My phone rang with a call from Amanda Chin. "Emma, I just finished the most enlightening interview of my career," she said, her voice tinged with professional excitement. "I need to ask you some follow-up questions for my article." "How did it go?" "Let's just say Sarah Martinez couldn't explain the methodology behind her own supposed breakthrough analysis. When I asked her to walk me through how she developed the 67% market expansion figure, she literally said she'd have to check her notes about her own research process." I felt a grim satisfaction. "What else did she say?" "The best part was when I showed her the IT log she provided. She tried to claim she'd been working with preliminary versions for months but only downloaded the final files in October. When I asked to see those preliminary versions, she said they were on her personal laptop at home." Amanda paused, and I could hear her typing. "Emma, I've covered corporate fraud cases before, but this level of systematic deception is remarkable." She had prepared explanations for everything except the actual work itself. Through Janet's office window, I could see Sarah gesturing emphatically, her voice raised enough that people were starting to glance over. Whatever defense she was mounting wasn't going well. "There's something else," Amanda continued. "After Sarah left, I called Patricia Morrison directly. She's agreed to go on record about the plagiarism concerns, and she's contacting the American Marketing Association's ethics board this afternoon." My blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means this story just became a lot bigger than workplace credit theft. Patricia is treating this as potential professional fraud, which could result in industry-wide blacklisting and formal ethics violations. She's also concerned about the implications for client trust across the entire marketing sector. At 10:47 a.m., Sarah burst out of Janet's office, her face flushed red with anger or humiliation. She stormed directly to my desk, and I could see people across the floor stopping their conversations to watch. "You couldn't handle not being the center of attention, could you?" she hissed, leaning over my desk. "I gave you credit for your contributions, but that wasn't enough. You had to destroy everything." "I didn't destroy anything, Sarah. I just documented what actually happened." What actually happened is that I transformed your raw data into a strategic vision that executives could understand. You did research. I created a campaign. Her voice was getting louder, drawing more attention from nearby cubicles. Then you should have been able to explain that research to the journalist, I replied calmly. Instead of saying you'd have to check your notes about your own work. Sarah's face went white. She hadn't realized I'd been in contact with Amanda during the interview process. You set me up, she whispered. You fed her information to make me look incompetent. I gave her the same documentation I gave Janet. If that made you look incompetent, maybe you should ask yourself why. Before Sarah could respond, Janet appeared beside us. Sarah, Emma, my office. Now. As we walked back toward Janet's office, I noticed that the normal buzz of office conversation had died down. People were watching us with a fascination reserved for car accidents and public meltdowns. Janet closed her door and turned to face us both. I just got off the phone with our managing director. Rebecca Walsh has moved up her call to 1 p.m., and she's specifically requesting to speak with whoever actually developed the demographic methodology. She looked directly at Sarah. That would be Emma. The silence in Janet's office stretched like a taut wire about to snap. Sarah's face cycled through emotions so rapidly I could barely track them: shock, rage, desperation, and finally, a calculating coldness that made my skin crawl. Janet, I need to be very clear about something, Sarah said, her voice suddenly steady in a way that terrified me. Emma has been struggling with some personal issues lately that I think are affecting her judgment. She's been making increasingly erratic claims about project ownership, and I'm concerned about her mental state. My mouth fell open. She was actually questioning my sanity. Yesterday after the presentation, she cornered me in the hallway claiming she'd done all the work herself. When I gently reminded her about our collaboration, she became quite agitated. Sarah's tone was perfectly modulated, concerned, professional, reluctantly revealing something she'd rather keep private. Janet's expression didn't change, but she made a note on her tablet. Go on. I didn't want to bring this up because I was trying to protect Emma's reputation, but she's been sending me increasingly hostile messages about wanting more recognition. I have screenshots if needed. Sarah pulled out her phone. I think the pressure of working on such a high-profile campaign may have triggered some kind of episode. The audacity was breathtaking. She was trying to gaslight me in front of our boss, using mental health stigma as a weapon to discredit my evidence. That's an interesting theory, Janet said dryly. Emma, how do you respond to these concerns about your mental state? I looked directly at Sarah, remembering every subtle put-down, every stolen idea, every calculated move to undermine my credibility. I respond with documentation. Timestamps don't lie, and neither do IT logs. My mental state didn't create 4 months of email threads showing my work. Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course Emma contributed research support. I've always acknowledged that. But she's now claiming she developed strategic frameworks that were clearly collaborative efforts. The demographic methodology, for instance, emerged from brainstorming sessions where I provided the conceptual direction and Emma handled the data analysis. Then explain why you couldn't walk Amanda Chen through that methodology 20 minutes ago, I said. I was caught off guard by her aggressive questioning style. She seemed more interested in creating conflict than understanding our collaborative process. Sarah turned to Janet. Honestly, I'm starting to wonder if Emma contacted that journalist specifically to undermine me. The timing is very suspicious. Janet held up a hand. Before we continue this character assassination, let me share something interesting. I spoke with Patricia Morrison this morning. Both Sarah and I went silent. Patricia has worked with Emma's published research before. She cited Emma's demographic framework in a presentation to Nike's marketing team in October. She knows Emma's analytical style intimately. Janet opened her laptop. Patricia told me, and I quote, Emma Rodriguez is one of the most innovative strategic thinkers in fitness marketing. If someone else is claiming credit for her methodology, they're committing professional fraud. Sarah's face strained of color. Patricia Morrison doesn't understand the full context of our collaboration. Patricia Morrison has 30 years of experience identifying strategic thinking patterns. She can spot authentic analysis from across the room. Janet leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. At 1 p.m., you're both joining the call with Rebecca Walsh. Emma will present the strategic framework she developed. Sarah will explain her actual contributions to the campaign. Sarah's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it reflexively. Whatever she saw there made her face go ashen. Problem? Janet asked. No, just. Marcus from IT is asking for my laptop. Something about a routine audit. Sarah's voice had lost all its earlier confidence. Janet smiled grimly. Not routine. I requested a comprehensive analysis of all file access and modification logs related to the Meridian project. We should have those results within the hour. The net was tightening, and Sarah was finally realizing she had nowhere left to run. At 12:15 p.m., Marcus from IT appeared at Sarah's desk with a grim expression and an official-looking tablet. Sarah Martinez? I need to collect your company laptop and phone for immediate forensic analysis. Director's orders. The timing couldn't have been worse, or better, depending on your perspective. The entire marketing floor watched as Sarah reluctantly handed over her devices, her hands visibly shaking. She tried to maintain her composure, but everyone could see the panic in her eyes. This is just a formality, right? She asked Marcus, loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. Some kind of routine security check? Marcus, who I'd known since orientation and who never sugarcoated anything, looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, I've been instructed to perform a complete data recovery analysis focusing on file transfers, email communications, and document access patterns for the past 4 months. This is definitely not routine. As Marcus walked away with Sarah's laptop, I noticed David from Creative Services approaching my desk with an expression of dawning realization. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I want a straight answer, he said, perching on the edge of my desk. Those creative files I asked you for yesterday, Sarah didn't have any of them, did she? What makes you ask that? Because I just spent 2 hours in a prep meeting where she couldn't explain basic design decisions that were supposedly her strategic choices. When I asked about the color psychology rationale, she said we should trust our instincts instead of getting bogged down in research details. David shook his head. Emma, I've worked with you on 6 campaigns over the past year. Your strategic briefs are always meticulous. Sarah's responses yesterday sounded like someone who'd never seen the analysis before. Before I could respond, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Rebecca Walsh's number, 30 minutes early. Emma Rodriguez? This is Rebecca Walsh from Meridian Fitness. I hope you don't mind me calling directly, but I've been speaking with Patricia Morrison, and she shared some very concerning information about your agency's internal practices. My heart hammered against my ribs. What kind of concerns? Patricia believes there may have been misrepresentation regarding the authorship of the strategic framework we've been reviewing. She's quite familiar with your published work and says the methodology in our campaign materials is identical to your demographic analysis from Marketing Insights Weekly. I glanced around the office, noticing that Sarah was nowhere to be seen. Mrs. Walsh, I think there are some important clarifications needed about the campaign development process. I agree completely. That's why I'm moving our call to 12:45 p.m., and I'm requesting that you present the strategic framework directly. Patricia will be joining us as well. She wants to ask some specific questions about analytical approaches that only the actual developer would be able to answer. After hanging up, I realized the stakes had just escalated beyond anything I'd imagined. Patricia Morrison wasn't just validating my work, she was conducting her own professional fraud investigation with our biggest client as a witness. At 12:35 p.m., Janet appeared at my desk looking like a general preparing for battle. Emma, are you ready for the most important presentation of your career? Because in 10 minutes, you're either going to save our client relationship or we're all going to watch a $2.3 million contract disappear. She paused, glancing around the office. By the way, where's Sarah? She needs to be on this call. Marcus from IT materialized beside us, holding his tablet with what looked like a detailed analysis report. About Sarah Martinez, I think you're going to want to see this data before that client call starts. The expression on his face told me that Sarah's problems had just gotten much, much worse. Marcus set his tablet on Janet's desk, and I could see rows of data that looked like a digital forensic report. I've never seen anything quite like this, he said, shaking his head. Sarah Martinez accessed Emma's files 847 times between October 1st and October 5th. She downloaded everything, research documents, email drafts, even deleted versions of spreadsheets from Emma's trash folder. Janet's eyebrows shot up. She was mining deleted files? Gets worse. She used administrative override codes to access Emma's personal drive folders that weren't even shared with the team. Technically, that's a fireable offense under our data security policies. Marcus scrolled through more entries. But here's the smoking gun. She forwarded all of Emma's original research to her personal Gmail account at 11:47 p.m. on October 3rd, then deleted the send emails from her company account. My phone rang before anyone could respond. Rebecca Walsh, right on schedule. Emma, I have Patricia Morrison on the line with me. Rebecca's voice came through the speaker. Patricia has some very direct questions about the demographic methodology. Patricia's voice was crisp and professional. Emma, I've reviewed your Marketing Insights article alongside the Meridian campaign materials. The analytical framework is identical down to the statistical modeling approach. Did you develop this methodology specifically for Meridian? I glanced at Janet, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, Patricia. I spent June through September developing the framework, published the foundational research in Marketing Insights Weekly, then applied it specifically to Meridian's market expansion goals. Excellent. Now, can you walk me through how you identified the 67% market expansion opportunity within the 18 to 34 female demographic? For the next 20 minutes, I explained my research process in detail, the database cross-referencing, the behavioral analysis patterns, the competitive landscape gaps I'd identified. Patricia asked increasingly technical questions that I answered confidently, while Rebecca occasionally interjected with approval. Emma, this is exactly the caliber of strategic thinking Meridian needs, Rebecca said. Patricia, are you satisfied with the authenticity verification? Completely. Emma clearly developed this methodology and applied it masterfully. However, I remain deeply concerned about how Sarah Martinez was positioned as the lead strategist when she obviously had no involvement in the actual analytical work. Janet leaned toward the speakerphone. Rebecca, Patricia, I want to address that directly. We've discovered that Sarah Martinez systematically misappropriated Emma's work and presented it as her own. She's been removed from the project effective immediately, and Emma will be your primary strategic contact moving forward. Thank God, Rebecca sighed. Emma, can you handle Friday's presentation? I want the actual strategist presenting to our executive team, not someone who stole your work. After the call ended, Janet looked at me with something approaching awe. Emma, not only did you just save a $2.3 million contract, but Rebecca wants to expand the project scope. She's talking about a full-year strategic partnership. My computer chimed with an email notification. It was from Amanda Chen. Emma, my article publishes tomorrow with a headline Marketing Professional Exposes Systematic Credit Theft, How Documentation Saved Her Career. Sarah Martinez declined to comment for the final version. Thought you should know, this story is already being picked up by 3 other industry publications. At 2:17 p.m., I watched through the office windows as Sarah cleaned out her desk under the supervision of HR. Her fast-track promotion had lasted exactly 18 hours. She avoided eye contact as she carried her cardboard box to the elevator, but I saw her glance back once with something between hatred and grudging respect. Janet appeared beside me holding an official-looking document. Emma Rodriguez, Senior Marketing Specialist, effective immediately. The fast-track program slot is yours, along with a $15,000 salary adjustment and lead strategist role on the expanded Meridian account. 6 months later, I won the American Marketing Association's Rising Star Award for Innovative Demographic Analysis. In my acceptance speech, I thanked everyone who had supported my work, and reminded the audience that the best revenge against professional theft is simply being undeniably good at what you do. Sarah Martinez was blacklisted from every major marketing agency in the city. Sometimes the truth really is enough.